Welcome to Pratidhwani, where we try to humanize science. I'm your host, GV Pawan Kumar. It is my absolute pleasure, delight, and an honor to welcome today's guest on the episode, Professor A.R. Venkatachalapathy. Professor Chalapathy is a very well known historian who has contributed very deeply to various interesting aspects of Tamil literature and also the history of the Tamil literature and also various different cultural aspects of Tamil Nadu. He writes not only in Tamil but also in English, and his scholarship actually is very vast and deep. He has published various books, of which Swadeshi's Team is one of the recent books which actually has really brought out very interesting aspects of one of the very interesting persons, VOC, which we'll also talk a little bit more. Apart from that, Professor Chalapathy actually has written numerous books, probably counting up to almost 25 or so, which includes both Tamil and English literature. Of that, the one of the very interesting books he has written is also related to coffee. In those days, there was no coffee, which actually will be kind of getting into the second edition, if I'm correct, very soon. And that is something which we will all look forward to it. Apart from all these very interesting stuff, he's a professor at Madras Institute of Developmental Studies, where he also teaches and mentors a lot of students. And he also has edited numerous books, and his webpage, which I'll be linking, will give you a very nice grasp of various historical aspects of his scholarship. And with this very brief introduction, I welcome Professor Venkatachalapathy on Pratidhwani.
Welcome. Good evening. Thank you so much, Pawan, for having me this evening. It's always a pleasure to talk. As you know, historians can't stop talking about themselves. So
No. It's
you
our
asked for it.
it's absolutely pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to have such a distinguished historian, because most of the discussion related to Pratidhwani is generally anchored in scholarship, and historians like you actually have contributed a lot. So give us a little bit of a kind of an overview of your origins, Professor Chalpathy. Tell us a little bit about where were you born, and how did you really get into the mold of becoming a scholar first and then a historian of repute.
Thank you, Pawan. I do believe that, to know the history being written better, you should know more about the historian. Unfortunately, in India, we find that we know very little about our historians. Only recently, you know, the great historians of India like Jadunath Sarkar, Sardesai, and others, slowly some historians are working about them. You'd be shocked to know that K.A. Nilakanta Shastri, who is one of the doyens of Indian history, wrote this big book on the Cholas. What we know about him is exactly 4 pages of his biographical note, which was published when he turned 80. So this is the state of our knowledge about historians. So though I don't claim to belong to this kind of a pantheon, I do think it's important that we know something of what goes into the making of a historian. I come from a artisanal family with no intellectual pedigree. I was born in a small town, which is, I think, about halfway between Chennai and Bangalore on the train route, called Gudiyatham. But by the time I was 6 months old, we moved to Chennai. So we became a middle class family. So even though my Tamil accent may not betray it, I'm actually a proper Chennaiite. Chennai has been my home all my life, except for brief periods when I've gone out to study or work outside. So I'm a Chennai person. So like many of my generation, so I was born in 1967. So in Tamil Nadu itself, 1967 is the year in which the DMK came to power. Uh, this is a complete coincidence, but I'm sure this has an impact on how I have grown up and how I have, shaped. Uh, like many of my generation, I grew up reading comics, and like all middle class young children, I read my Enid Blyton's, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, Sherlock Holmes, all kinds of stuff. But I think something changed, which when I talk to my contemporaries, I find that there's something very different. Is that when I was about 13 or 14 years old, I started reading in Tamil. So I believe that in our metros, I don't think anybody from my generation, coming from my class background, actually was reading in Telugu or Kannada or Hindi or Punjabi or whatever. Bengal and Malayalam could be exceptions. So I credit whatever I have done to this shift. So when I was in about class 9 or class 10, I began to read in Tamil. I changed schools from a CBSE school to a state board school. And the state board school was a government school. It came with an additional privilege. Because of the limited infrastructure, it used to work under the shift system. There used to be two shifts so that more students could study. So which basically meant that I had half a day to myself. So between my 10th and 12th standard for 3 years, I read only in Tamil. For 3 years, I don't recall reading a single English book during those 3 years. So that laid the foundation for what I became. Many recognize me as a bilingual historian and a bilingual writer, and I'm very proud to be recognized in that fashion. So I read a lot of Tamil, and my idea was to become a writer. Full time, I wanted to be a writer, but I knew that from the experience of earlier Tamil writers, it was very, very clear that either you are a writer or you have three meals on your plate. So I decided that I would study BCom, join a public sector bank, and do no work when I'm drawing salaries, make life difficult for the customers, not disbursing the money that is their own. I have very bitter experience with banks. But I said, this is what I want to become. So you have all the time to yourself, and weekends you can write. But by the time I joined college, I had actually become interested in this uh, very important political and cultural figure, V.O. Chidambaram Pillai. So there is a strange paradox. In Tamil Nadu itself, he is a household name. But outside Tamil Nadu, nobody actually knows him. So I became fascinated by this figure, and I was reading biographies extensively. I love biographies. I also love reading autobiographies. So to give you one indication, one of the great biographies that I read by the time I was 14 or 15 was Boswell's Life of Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, your very first introduction to a biography is the best in the field. It's like, I used to tell my students, when they complained that, I am assigning them difficult readings, I would tell them, I asked them, if somebody came to you and said, say, suppose it is Bangalore, I said, where do you try your mm, the best South Indian tiffin? Uh, they said, yes, of course, we'd send them to MTR or some similar place. I said, why should you go to MTR? You should start from a very bad place. Slowly, you should, eat better and better, better and better. They said, sir, that is very bad logic. So I said the same thing. Why in intellectual matters you want to start with bad stuff? You should start with the very best. So the Boswell's Life of Johnson was a big eye opener. It was. I still remember the layout of the page.
Mm.
So the edition that I read, actually, if you look at it, each page on the what we now call the header will not have the chapter heading. It will indicate the content of that particular page. Even to conceive this now becomes difficult. So only after the page is set, the footer is designed for each page. And each page will indicate the year and also the age of Johnson at that particular time. So I was moved, I was fascinated by the language, and I was also fascinated by the amount of research that had gone into that book. So when I read biographies, I found that Indian biographies were sadly lacking. They were all hagiographical and they were based on very thin evidence. So I resolved that, I am going to write a biography of V.O. Chidambaram Pillai and it will be based on solid evidence. But I did not have confidence. I was a puny boy and I had very low self esteem. So I didn't have the confidence that I could write anything. So I decided that I will compile all the documents that will be useful for writing a biography. So uh, when I was about 14 or 15, I began collecting the correspondence of V.O. Chidambaram Pillai. So over a period of about year and a half, I could collect about 40 letters. About half of them were unpublished. And then somebody told me that, after I'd exhausted all the libraries, private collections, somebody told me the Tamil Nadu archives will have material for you. So I went to the Tamil Nadu archives. There they drove me away. They told me that school boys are not permitted inside the archives. So I couldn't go into the archives. So as soon as I joined my BCom with a college identity card, I entered the Tamil Nadu archives. And within a week, I was very clear that I wanted to be a historian.
Fabulous, fabulous. It's a really. I've also heard this when you spoke to Mr. Sriram recently in a very interesting interview, where you had a beautiful discussion on some of the things what you mentioned. You also mentioned that that exposure to archive really had a very deep impression on your scholarly life. It's very unusual for a person right at the formative years to have such kind of strong inclination towards, let's say, looking at, for example, the students of that age will have some other fantasies so to speak, but in your case you're really thinking about writing and other things. Was there also some kind of an influence from other than, let's say, your reading, for example, in your own environment, for example, in your school or college, where you were kind of encouraged to do this, probably through your teachers or somebody?
No, I've been very, very fortunate. First, I had some very good teachers in all my schools. There were also very bad teachers. I'm looking for one or two of them. And if I actually see them, you will find newspaper reports saying that award-winning Tamil author and historian beats up his school teacher. And when produced before the magistrate, he refused to apologize and he was remorseless. But that is one part. But there were also some great teachers who really encouraged me. They somehow realized that I had the flair for language. So both in the CBSE school that I studied and in my government school that I studied, there were a couple of very good teachers. First, they were very inspiring. They held the students in rapt attention,
Mhm.
and they also identified people with potential. So often I feel that as a teacher I have been a failure compared to my teachers who spotted talent and potential. So this was one influence. I would especially mention my English teacher in school called Mrs. Alice Jeevan Prakash, and in the Tamil teacher in my government school called Pulavar Gomadinayo. But the two very big influences were two cultural figures. Uh, when I was I was in my 10th standard, I finished my 10th. During that crucial period when I was moving to plus two, I think I belonged to the third generation of plus two, 10 plus two. Earlier generation, 3 years earlier, they were all doing PUC. Would remember that. So when I was there was a small literary organization in my neighborhood. This was run by a cultural figure. He came from extremely modest circumstances, but he would conduct a literary meeting every first Sunday of the month. So I happened to go there because there was a quiz competition, and he immediately, like a kidnapper in a temple festival fair, you know, he actually kidnapped me. He began talking to me. He lent me books. Every week I would meet him. He was my first big concrete influence. His name was Ma Mani. He was 50 years old at that time, and I was about 14 or 15. So every month he would call a speaker. So in the very first year of my relation, my friendship with him, he brought a scholar called Ta Kovenda. He gave a talk, and I was very impressed by his lecture, and I went to see him. So the first few meetings, he was not very welcoming, but very quickly, very deep bond developed. So I would meet these two persons every week. This Coven then had a huge library. He was a man of very modest. In fact, I'll put it very bluntly. He was a ghostwriter. His ghostwriting included not only books but also PhD thesis. So if somebody is complaining that Indian higher education is going to the dogs, it has quite a long history. So, but what could he make? So but still he would keep buying books. So he lent me books in Tamil literature. Uh, those were the days when Russian literature was very much in the air. So the Russian 19th century classics, poetry. I, I read Neruda at that time, the classical literature. So all this, I was all the positive influences that you can think of, all converged. So in fact, so you had very little option but to actually become something, some person of some worth. After all these influences, you didn't do anything. It means that you are completely useless. So I take some credit that all of them, because of these influences, if I could do something, because I had something in me, and all of them, with they try to shape me, or they trained me without, trying to fully influence. So various influences, all of them coming from very different backgrounds and interests. So through Cohen, then I got to know the great translator M.L. Tangappa. So some of you, my readers would know that I edited his translation of Tamil Sangam poetry
Yes.
into English, and I got it published through Penguin.
Mm.
At the same time, while I was influenced by this traditional scholar Govindan, I was also reading the great modern writers. I became very close friends with the Tamil writer Sundara Ramsamy.
Mm.
I was also introduced to the Tamil little magazine culture. So a number of influences came together. And at this time, I decided after doing BCom, by the time I was doing BCom, I said I wanted to be a full-time historian. And then I chose to study history through a distance course because I believe that the MA degrees being offered in uh, Tamil Nadu universities were no good. So I did it through correspondence course from Madurai Kamaraj University and used that time to work in a library. This library called Maramalai Adigal Library was created with the collections of the great 19th century Tamil scholar Maramalai Adigal. So this became the most important center for research until about the 1990s. This was the single most important repository of Tamil imprints anywhere in India. For 3 years, I was there. So I read like a man possessed. So I got introduced to uh, the entire Tamil print tradition. So that was then I realized that I wanted to be formally trained. This writers can be kind of sui generis, but a historian needs training. Many people, especially now in the day of social media, think that anybody can become a historian. They don't require any training. So, but of course, you need to be trained. So I went to JNU. JNU opened a new world, and I studied history in the renowned history department of JNU. That was another opening. So I would say that I was introduced to the best traditions of history writing in India at JNU.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it also is probably a great exposure for you to expand your kind of thinking and also ideas about historiography, because I think you would have also learned new methods. And when you have this kind of very broad view, you would have probably also got the taste of writing books at a very early age, even before starting your formal PhD and also kind of research based career. Tell us a little bit about how you got into writing books and also the plethora of books what you have written. It is quite remarkable because by any specific standards or any particular measures, to really be so productive and so interesting for a long period of time, one can actually be productive but not interesting. But in your case, you have really probably upped your game every time you have written new books. And at least to me the first exposure to your writing was about the coffee work, which is kind of a remarkable piece of work, which also blends the social and cultural history and also intellectual history to a certain extent. And you've touched upon all these things in your writing. So the two pointed questions is, first of all, how did you get started writing books? And second of it is the variety and the depth of your research and writing. in terms of various different parts of the stuff, what you've kind of explored in terms of the landscape. Give us a little bit of gist about that, please.
Um, See, as I said, I didn't have the confidence that, I could write something worthwhile. So my first work was the, uh, the letters of V.O. Chidambaram Pillai.
Mm.
So 43 letters dating from the 1890s to the 1930s. So I think until that point, no major Tamil cultural figure had so many of his letters put together. So I mean, I didn't realize all these things. I did it because I thought, this would be worthwhile. How can anybody write a biography without the correspondence? Then slowly, as I gained confidence, so I began to write, and my first few books were either collections of documents or monographs. The first monograph that I wrote was about the so-called riots that followed the arrest of V.O. Chidambaram Pillai during the freedom struggle in 1908. So I thought this was a very dramatic event. So my that small monograph, which was published in 1987, was uh, it focused just on that protest violence,
Mhm.
but what went before it and what followed it. So my research began with V.O. Chidambaram Pillai, but as I began to study him, I realized that you cannot write about him without getting a better sense of the times in which he lived through, because he was involved in all the major movements of his life. He was a political leader, a Swadeshi leader. He was a Tamil writer. He was a scholar editor. He was a labor leader. He was involved in the non-Brahmin movement. So basically, I realized that if you wanted to know more about him, you have to study all these movements. So I began to do this study. And by the time I was doing all this work, became very clear that to be a good historian, you should have a full understanding of that particular times. So you should be steeped in that particular period. So I would read anything that came from that period. Of course, on the one hand, one was reading the literary writings, novels, short story, fiction, poetry, essays, and I was any magazine published during that period, I would read, make. So all of this, you are actually swimming in that period.
Mm.
And as a fellow scholar, you'll realize that, so when you are actually pursuing one particular line of thought, there are so many other lines of thought that keep pulling at you. I would say the best scholar is somebody who neither fully succumbs to all the seductions or who is completely blinker. If you do either of the two, you are doomed. If you get seduced by every interesting idea that you get, you're not going to finish anything. You're going to put blinkers, your work is going to be very, very poor. So I think somehow I struck the balance. So I was interested on the one hand in V.O. Chidambaram Pillai. I was interested in Subramanya Bharati. My great Tamil writer hero was Pudumai Pittan.
Mhm.
And then I was interested in poetry. So when I was reading all these things, new ideas would come. Some of them I would just make a mental note of it. Sometimes I would make copies. So at a certain point, something becomes, the seduction is like that of the siren, it won't let you go. It will pull you. So, as I was reading all this stuff from the 1920s, this was for uh, 2 or 3 projects that I was working simultaneously. One is, of course, the long-term project of V.O. Chidambaram Pillai. The other was for my PhD. I was doing my history of Tamil print and publishing.
Yes.
So, as I was reading, I found that, suddenly in the 1920s, all important writers are commenting about coffee and coffee drinking. You realize that something is happening here. So, uh, like many of fellow scholars, just put that down in cards. We used to use cards. Nowadays these are all out of fashion. After you have the control F option and various softwares, so you jot down things on index cards. So at a certain point you realize that you have a bunch of stuff, and then when you look at it, then you start to see the gaps. So nobody ever actually writes with everything on hand.
Yeah.
So at one point you realize that you have something to go on, and then your research becomes more focused and targeted. You know which is the haunt, you know where to hunt. Or to use a nautical metaphor, you know the sea. Now you know where you have to cast the net and what kind of net you should cast. Should it have big islets or small islets, or do you have to trawl the seabed? You take that call at that time. And then you put them all together, and the uh, impulse to write comes from various sources. So, on the one hand, you are an academic, right? As an academic, conferences give you the proximate push to write. They call you, they say, give a paper, you can't say no. Pavan is a friend in ISER, and you want to see him, you want to go to Pune, something like that. You can't say no. Because, like we say in Tamil, only if you go to the marriage of other families, somebody will come
They
for
will come to your.
your
Yes.
family's weddings. So you
True.
do
True.
that. You say, okay, Pawan says in March I'm going to have a conference. This is the, you say, okay. And then as the date gets closer, then you really start wondering, have you committed to something which you can't do? And then you sit, and then you realize that this particular bunch of notes that you've made, you can somehow fit it into the larger theme that Pawan has conceived. So usually you do that first draft. Some remain those first drafts, or you recycle them on various occasions. But at some point, the amorphous arguments and the amorphous paper that you have put together actually take shape. So this is one form. But in the Tamil context, I have always thought in terms of, with a clear idea in mind, what I'm going to write, for whom I am going to write. Because the Tamil academic world is a very different creature altogether. So you do that. There is great hesitancy on my part to begin writing anything. I will postpone it as far as possible. I would, in fact, I would postpone it as far as it becomes even impossible to do that. But at a certain point, you start writing. But when you begin writing, you have self-doubt. You are filled with self-loathing. But at some point, you become possessed, and you are waiting for that moment. It is a very exacting and draining process. It drains you physically, it drains you emotionally. But that moment of possession is what you are waiting for. And once you get possessed, some magic happens to your writing. So, arguments which you knew you did not have in your mind, it unfolds. It is almost like, some characters in my books. I had no idea that in the work of historical research, characters will actually take shape in a way that I didn't realize it. I'll give two examples. One is uh, I wrote a book on copyright. You said some very nice words at the beginning. I will not be immodest enough to accept all those words of praise. But one particular attribute that you mentioned, that I will accept with happiness. You said there is variety in my writing. That is true. I am like a little child. I get fascinated by this and that. Like a magpie, anything that is shining and bright, I pick it up. But then I work on it. So one of the things that I worked on is I wrote a book on copyright in relation to Subramanya Bharati. So I also pride myself on writing about topics which I'm not concerned whether anybody else is interested. So who is interested in a book about copyright? I don't think anybody is interested. Unless you are a big time lawyer charging thousands of dollars per hour, we are not interested in copyright. But I got interested in it in the specific context of Subramanya Bharati and literary writing. So when I wrote that book, first the response that I got to that book was amazing. In the sense that first nobody was interested, but anybody who actually picked it up and read, they said, this is a fascinating story. And I conceded, it is a fascinating story, irrespective of the fact that I have written it. This is a fascinating story. It has never happened anywhere in the world that the writings of a poet or a writer is put in the public domain because of public demand.
Public demand. That's amazing. That's absolutely
That is
amazing.
an amazing story.
Amazing story.
So in that story, the received wisdom was that the half brother of the poet was a villain. That is the received story. I believed that story, and that was with that mindset I sat and wrote. For 25 years, I have always been under the impression that he was the villain. But when I finished writing the manuscript, I find that this villain has become a tragic hero. It was not intended.
Wonderful. Fascinating. Fascinating. It's a transformation in a way.
It's a transformation. So it is, for me, it is a learning. I don't know what I'm going to write. Yes, I have all the data, I have all the cards. So to use a very South Indian or even an Indian analogy, the column that is drawn at the doorstep of our homes, column or rangoli. The South
Rangoli,
Indian
yes.
column
Yeah.
is
Column.
based on dots. You have a pattern of dots.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
The column is drawn, the dots define the column. Without the dots, you can't draw the column. But the lines should not touch the dots at all. So that is the challenge.
Beautiful. That's an amazing analogy. Amazing analogy. Yes.
It defines your structure. You cannot leave out even one dot. Even if one dot is outside that column, it means your column is wrong. It's like, one bit of huge, stellar data not fitting into your constellation. So, but when you write, you draw those lines, you realize that you didn't actually set out to Right. So I'll give you another analogy. I said my boyhood hero was V.O. Chidambaram Pillai. I worked on him for 40 years. It is my search for him that made me a historian. So in all my work, it never struck me that his wife was a important figure. Like in all or most Indian uh, lives of Indian leaders and cultural figures, the wives only figure as shadows or wrong influences or just as a figure of support. So they don't come out in flesh and blood. The very rare exceptions would be somebody like Kasturba Gandhi. Even somebody like Kasturba Gandhi has had a biographer only very recently.
Yes, yes, that's
The
a
same
very
way,
correct. Yeah.
V.O. Chidambaram Pillai's wife is practically invisible to everybody. She was invisible to me. But when I wrote this short book 3, 4 years ago on VOC's travails in the prison, by the time I finished the manuscript, I find that there is a chapter on her. And in fact, she was actually threatening to take over the book. It appeared as though that, she was a bigger hero than her husband. And if you think of it, this man went to prison, suffered everything, but it was his own choice. Nobody asked him to, serve the cause of the people, be a patriot, run a indigenous shipping company. Nobody asked him to do it. Because of his conviction, he did all these things, and he knew what he was in for. He knew that he was not going to be petted by the alien government for running the shipping company. But this is not the case with his wife. His wife must have married him with great dreams. She would have. She came from a well-to-do family, and she was married to a well-to-do man from a good and affluent family. And what happens? By the time she is 18, she is the mother of 2 children, and her husband is in prison, and she is running from pillar to post, trying to raise money for his legal defense, moving from city to city, so that she can be near her husband's place of imprisonment. This is not what she bargained for. And her plight, one letter that she writes to a friend of her husband. She says, when he is in prison, she is writing to his friend. She said, "Dear brother, you will recall that you came to our home a number of times when my husband was doing good legal practice. You enjoyed our hospitality and everything. Now my husband is in prison. I have written you 3, 4 letters asking for help. You have not replied to my letter. Please, even if you cannot help me, at least write a line and reply." I mean, it is
Amazing,
the
amazing.
courage that she
Yeah.
shows. And if we have time, I'll give you another anecdote.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens is when her husband is in prison, her brother-in-law goes mad because the brother has had a draconian sentence imposed on. So the brother-in-law is in bad shape. Her mother-in-law is distraught. Her father-in-law is a broken man because this is the firstborn. VOC is the firstborn in the family. So, in an Indian family, how much, is on the shoulders of the first one. So, in this situation, his wife, Chidambaram Pillai's wife, writes a letter to her father in law.
Mhm.
Father in law has not written a letter to the daughter in law consoling her or anything. what she is writing to her father-in-law, saying that, dear father-in-law, please do not worry, please do not be distressed. My husband has not gone to a prison house. He has actually gone to the temple of patriotism.
Mhm.
When he comes out of prison, he will bring great name and fame to our family and this country. So, this is an 18-year-old girl consoling a 60-year-old father in law.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
if you are not moved by this story, then you cannot be, you are completely hard hearted. And if in your research you find material like this and you write and your readers are not moved, it means that you should not write. You are
That's
not
true.
fit to write.
True.
So,
Fabulous.
if I have some readers, some very careful readers of my work, I have some fans, it is because of the choice that I have made. I have chosen the most important stories, neglected stories that shine through and move the readers despite the limitations of its author.
Very nice. Very nice. Such a beautiful description. It also, brought the storyteller in you, Chalpati. It's an absolute pleasure to hear from the horse mouth, so to speak, who is really, narrating this particular story, deeply entrenched in the resources of the information which is available, because that is one thing which is very fascinating, and it also gives a very interesting insight into your own, thinking of how deeply you think about characters and how you weave it through the threads of the narration anchored in facts. That is something which is very, very fascinating. So give us a gist about your writing mechanics, the process itself, because this is something all of us, both as students and also teachers, we generally have to talk about this whenever we are interacting with students. Of course, each scholar has their own method, but it would be great to know about the mechanics. Of course, you started, as you mentioned, with the cards, index cards, and how has your writing technology evolved over a period of time? Like, how much time do you spend on the research part of your or phase of your work, and when do you switch over to writing and those details?
Uh, mm, Doing research is the most exciting part. Left to myself or left to oneself, any historian would spend his or her whole time doing research.
Same with scientists,
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Oh, really? I thought that they produce papers every other week.
No, even then it is very difficult. The thrill is still, going into the lab, discovering, inventing, and things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
without that thrill and fascination, this our entire vocation would be, meaningless. So uh, first, the search is endless. So I have spent something like 30, 40 years
Mm.
doing research. There have been times when I've completely avoided writing. There have been times when I have not written for years together. You would find it hard to believe because at the last count, this I don't count because I don't like this counting business. But one of my fans and one of my readers recently at a felicitation meeting said counted 59 books that I have published in the
Amazing.
last, yeah. So
59 books. And
59.
if I'm correct, you also have a fan club, right?
Well, that is true. I have a fan club.
Oh
I'm
man, that
very
is,
happy to. Uh,
scholars. It's also a reflection of the culture. To be very frank, that's a value. Also, the people give to something what you've done. Fabulous. Please continue.
Absolutely.
Please continue.
This redounds to the credit of the readers and not to the author.
Yeah.
And because I know it, I am a great fan of some of our greatest writers. I am a great fan of E.P. Thompson. I am a great fan of Christopher Hill. I love Hobsbawm's writings. So I have gone and seen my writer heroes. I went and met Sundar Ramasamy when I was 19 years old. I went and saw K. Rajanarayanan. So it is not uncommon at all. But what is uncommon is I should have fans. So it also redounds to their credit. They found something interesting. So I try to avoid writing, but there have been times when I have not written at all. But after a certain point, uh, there is an inner desire to share what you write, what you want to share, what you know, and something takes shapes in you. After postponing it endlessly, then you start writing. So my way of writing is this. First, it's like I want to use a very old-fashioned 19th century industrial metaphor. It is like a piston. You build up steam. You keep building up steam, and at a certain point, there is no other way but for the engine to fire on all cylinders. And you also are very careful. You can't make a false start. Writers are superstitious. If you have not built up enough steam, you will make a false start. Unfortunately, if you make a false start, the likelihood of getting that particular locomotive going again on tracks, the probability just plummets. So
Nice,
you don't
nice.
want to be in that situation.
Okay.
It is better to explode rather than fizzle out.
Nice. Yeah.
You do that. And then I don't have a writing plan. I don't use skeletons structures. I know people who have this kind of way of working. They put skeleton structures. They have worked out diagrams, frames. I don't do any of these things. There is something in my mind. I postpone, I delay, I develop this pressure. And when I'm doing that, I will not read anything else. I am only immersed and soaked in the material that I am having. And on my table, I'll have only this stuff. Last 10 years, I think I've been writing on the computer. But even when I'm writing on the computer, I need to have at least 15 pens, 10 pencils, some of them broken, some of them out of refill, couple of erasers, stapler, punching machine, sellotape, clips, everything should be there on the table. I may not use it at all, but everything has to be there. So then I start typing. There was a time when I used to start from 0 and then go up to the end. Start from chapter 1 and end at the conclusion. Those days are days of luxury. Those days are gone. Now you don't have that kind of time. You're not like the Western authors who get the huge advances. They can just lock themselves up, refuse to take calls from the Nobel Prize Committee. These
and
are
go on
not,
a hiking, go on a hiking with a
yes,
zero.
yeah, these kind of things. We are waiting whenever there is a prize. We are just hoping that at least you'll make it to the long list.
But
So,
I should mention to the listeners and others, Professor Chalapathy is a Sahitya Academic Award winner. So there are many accolades which has already garnered him, and it's a absolute kind of modesty that Professor Chalapathy is not mentioning about all those things. Yeah.
but Pawan, you get the point, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we don't have those kind of liberties. We are academics. We are responsible to our institution, our students, our peers. So there are various demands on you. So what I have been doing is I also learned to from also you become a family man. You have to do some basic minimum of domestic work. You cannot be a thorough. You excuse a profanity. You cannot be a thorough jerk or a thorough prick. Yeah, some amount of responsibility you need to take, which means that you are not the master of your time. So what I do is uh, the parts of the manuscript which are very, very clear and self-contained, I write that first. That is one way of writing. I do that. Another way of writing is increasingly, because if you look at my writing, it is made up of uh, numerous discrete bits of data. So one of the challenges is how do you put that together? So I'm very happy if some good history students, historians actually look at my notes very carefully. Actually, I read the uh, the 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 utmost respect that I can give to a good historian is I read from page 1 to the index. I read everything. I read the imprint page. I read acknowledgements. I read every footnote. So, but this
Very nice.
courtesy or this respect is reserved only for the best historians and careful historians. Not
Nice.
best, I mean, careful historians. So, I learn a lot from it. So as I said, if I have a narrative, if it is a long essay, then I start from the beginning and end at the end. But if it is a monograph or a book, I write the best sections that I'm confident of. Or if it is a book like the Swadeshi Steam, which I'd say at a rough count, it is based on about 1,500 little bits of information. So what I would do is within a certain structural framework, which also is broadly chronological. This structure can be either chronological or thematic.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
So what I would do is I would put together all these things. So one advantage of a computer is this, earlier we used to use this card. So you had to arrange these cards. You could not add things in between. It becomes very difficult. You have to get your narrative right at the very beginning. Some people think that was a very bad age. I would actually think it is a golden age. Because at your very first draft, it's a workable draft. Because you have no other option. The first draft has to be a good draft. But with our computer, with this, toggling and, cut and paste, you can, so you have this luxury of, putting in discrete bits of data and playing around with it. So if at the early stages, it is very, very frustrating.
Frustrating, yeah.
You don't know where it is going.
But you do all your reading upfront, or you go back and forth between writing and reading?
When I am writing, I don't read.
Okay.
So in fact, I avoid reading anything else also.
Yeah.
Avoid except reading newspapers and magazines. I won't read anything else. I will not watch anything. If at all I watch or listen to any music, that would be I know that I finished a chunk that is of kind of self-contained, then I do it. So when I describe all these things, if there are younger scholars listening to me, two things I want to say. First is this is not the best way to write. So please listen to this as a story or as a quaint, old fashioned way of writing. That is one aspect of it. The other is each person has his or her own way of writing. You have to discover it yourself. Yes, writing is a skill that can be learned, but I'm not sure if it is a skill that can be taught,
Mm.
except very broad things. You can say, don't do these things. Like, I'd say, don't eat two full biryanis and sit and write. Very unlikely that, you will be able to get your writing right.
True, true.
Yes, sir, you have to be, in a sense, lean, mean, and hungry. For some people, many cups of coffee works. People have different ways, people have different superstitions. Find your way, and also ultimately find a way that is ultimately healthy and that is self-sustaining.
Mm.
It means that you have to smoke 100 cigarettes to write a paper. Unless you are Einstein, please don't do it.
Yeah, even
If you
even
are an
Westin
Einstein,
also don't
please
do it.
don't do it. If you
Exactly.
are an Einstein, all the more reason why you shouldn't do it, because you are Einstein. You are too valuable. You can't smoke 100 cigarettes. You can't drink 10, 15 cups of coffee. And do anything that will, destroy you is not a good way of doing it. See how it can be sustained. That I would say. This is not a, I am preaching because I have not done it. I'm, uh, I'm exhausted after every phase of writing. But that is the way that writing is. But generally, I would say that please don't be very finicky with your first draft.
Mm.
These are certain general things. It's like, you want to go to Koramangala, this is the road. Don't take this cul-de-sac. There is a pit over there. This is the place where there are, set of community dogs. Don't go there. So these kind of broad things, yes, you should follow. But otherwise, you find your own way to write, which is sustainable. Things like, don't obsess over one sentence. Move on. If you get stuck somewhere, move on to something else. But from my own experience, couple of tips might help. For me, a good opening gambit helps me.
Mm.
So if you can begin, get an arresting line. It's like it's like a takeoff, or it is like a diving board.
Nice, nice.
That is very helpful. Sometimes if I get a title right, it helps me. Or if I know that this is going to be the meat of the story, all these things help. So different things help for different people. Find your own way, but ultimately, I think discipline of some form. I don't mean discipline in the policing sense, moralistic sense, but some kind of there are some people think that only if you are erratic and indisciplined you can be a great writer. That is a that
Myth.
is a lot of BS. Please don't do it. I know some great writers who are so methodical.
Yeah, yeah.
So some people, I'm jealous of them. Some people who start writing at 5 and end at 9 in the morning. So 5 to 9. I tell you, nobody in the world can stop that kind of a person from producing good work. But I can't do it. I'm not a late night person. I'm not an early morning person. I'm not a midday person. I have to write in between. So you have to do that.
Such an important lesson, Pati, because I have also seen the same thing among scientists who actually are uh, who are productive not only in terms of the output what they put out in terms of papers but also in terms of the ideas. In fact, over a long duration, it is the methodical way which actually probably has very high impact without compromising, the well-being, without actually it's a sustainability. That's one of the key word what you absolutely mentioned. So finally, tell us a little bit about your influences. You did mention a few historians whom you actually kind of named. Who whose writing and whose style and whose methods you have found over your rich career to be very interesting to you. It may not directly be the same methods what you use, but something where you have studied and you have seen that this is something very interesting, something which is fascinating, your kind of intellectual influences.
I would, no, I am a eclectic reader.
Hmm.
So anything that catches my fancy, so I read it. So the British Marxist historians, the French annals historians, uh, I've found, I don't know whether I can say I can be influenced by them.
Hmm.
I've been fascinated by their writing. Influence are all very big words.
Hmm.
To even say that you are influenced by Hobsbawm means that, it is hubris. But good writing, and if you read good writing, it is impossible that, uh, for you to write very poorly.
Hmm.
So
True,
I read
true.
historians, I read other social scientists, good anthropologists, good sociologists, but I also read a lot of literary reading. That is, I think, I'd say that is the cornerstone of whatever training that I have. So I read
So in
fiction.
terms of proportion, I assume you would actually be reading a lot, right? Lot more time you would be means mechanically sitting and reading longer duration than even probably compared to writing, if I'm correct.
Once again, reading is sometimes becomes an end in itself because it's
Itself,
such a
yes.
pleasure
Absolute
reading.
pleasure. Yeah.
But luckily, many decades ago, this was more than 20 years ago. I could even almost date the year. I think it was probably in 2002. The celebrated historian Ramchandra Guha, once when he came to Chennai, he has been a very good, more than a friend, I think, in Indian terms, should call the risk of, claiming too much, say, is kind of an elder brother.
Fabulous,
Uh,
fabulous. Yeah.
he, once when we were walking down, we went out for lunch, and then we went to the landmark bookshop in Chennai. I picked up books, and then we were walking, and suddenly Ram Guha told me, Charapti, I think you should read less and write more. Told me. I'm not sure if I've actually followed him, but that particular statement that he made has lingered. And when I actually repeated this in the Fest Script conference for Ramchandra Guha had no clue to that. He didn't remember, he couldn't recall telling me that. And he also was surprised that, he would actually tell somebody to read
Everybody.
less.
Yeah.
Because, there is a famous instance which happened in Kerala, one of the Kerala universities selection board interviews. I will give the name of the interviewer and not the interviewee.
Okay.
So, Professor R.S. Sharma was one of the selection committee members, the big historian. So, he was sitting in the interview, and the interview was going on. One applicant who had applied for the professorship. was producing all the books that he had produced and everything. So finally, R.S. Sharma, the expert, was asked to, pose a question to the applicant. So R.S. Sharma said, say, Dr. So and so, you have written a number of books. He said, yes, sir, I have written a number of books. So he said, I think it is time you started reading books. So this was R.S. Sharma's famous repartee. So generally, we are telling people to read more and not less. But I think Ram Guha gave this advice to me probably because I was just freaking out. And I went to a old bookshop, and also since I was a bilingual reader, so much. And also sometimes when you read good books, so there are so many good books to read. Why add to the bad books which are going to remain unread? So you can at least read the great books. So I'm fascinated, and I think Amazon has online book buying has really had a very deep impact, both positive and negative, on the state of your house, how it is
Same here.
organized or unorganized. The advantage is you can acquire any book. Books, which we had to buy when we went abroad. We had to lug it around, ask people for photocopies. Now everything is available, but at the same time, way too many books. So I have tried to cut down on reading, which is very, very difficult because there's now a explosion in books. A lot of good books being written and also a lot of good subjects being handled. Unfortunately, some of these subjects are being spoiled because you write a bad book about a good subject, and then that means that
It's
nobody
already
else
ruined.
can write.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
so
yeah. True, true.
that happens. So uh, it's sad. I would like to do more reading. Right now, I'm reading. Uh, I'm reading a novel by. My pronunciation might be wrong. Colm Toybin. This is a novel on Thomas Mann.
Okay.
So, so these kinds of writings, which are historically rooted,
Hmm.
but explore the inner mind. I would, I would say that I am fascinated by books, which I cannot write. Books which are beyond my ability. Those
Wonderful.
kind of books I
Wonderful.
really, really enjoy.
Fabulous, fabulous. It's been an absolute pleasure to really, get all these insights from you, Professor Chalapathy. In fact, it's been a great honor. And finally, any small recommendations in addition to the book, what you're mentioning? Is there anything which you think would also motivate and also inspire people to look at and read? It can be even art or anything else. Just the last word. Yeah.
I would say that, I have no advice for younger historians and younger writers because they are at the cusp of a major epistemological knowledge revolution. Whatever lessons that I have learned, they might at best serve the fulfillment of some idle curiosity. The way research is being done has been fundamentally transformed. For instance, the material, most of the material that I have collected by running around half the world can now be accessed at the click of a button. So, what is the use or worth of my experiences? So, it is, I have to learn from the next generation, how to do certain things faster. But sometimes you wonder, whether my generation is actually capable of producing things fast.
No, but
So,
there is also a downside, right? Because then with AI coming in, people probably are also getting a little sloppy with a lot of things. In fact, the ability to really put together things coherently is becoming a very big challenge. Yeah.
see, I would say that, there has always been sloppy writing.
Yeah.
When did we not have sloppy writing?
Mm.
So, I wouldn't say that. No, it depends. But in fact, now, if you don't want to do sloppy writing, you have all the devices and facilities for.
Mm. You're right. Yeah.
So, I use, you know, to cross check.
Mm.
I want to know, I'm just referring to Thomas
Mm.
Mann. I want to know, there is now no excuse to give the date of his birth and date of his death wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in our times, we had to search in encyclopedias, look for it. Now those things are can be easily rectified. You can check your grammar. You can check some facts. Especially, for even myself, who is actually dependent on my own reading for, on my own research for my writing. All allied things,
Mm.
peripheral things. I'm writing about Chidambaram Pillai. Suddenly, I want to say something about Garibaldi. I don't have to go and do original research on Garibaldi or Mazzini. There, I find the new technologies very
Technology is
useful.
very useful. Very interesting. Very interesting.
So that
So
I still use that. But I think now it's a new generation. They have to, and there is no textbook to teach anybody anything. The
absolutely
next
right.
generation has to learn, and it's the pace at which things are changing is, I mean, it's
Remarkable.
mind-boggling.
Mind.
So let us avoid this pitfall of preaching to the younger
The younger.
scholars. I
What?
have great hopes. Uh, the kind of interest that there is in our past and in writing and in good writing, I think it's actually increased rather than
Yes.
decreased. So
Decrease.
this is a very positive note. It's a very good time to be a middle-aged historian, I would say that, so that you are gaining from both sides.
Both sides. Yeah.
I would give a hand and a leg to, get, to make myself 10, 15 years younger.
Mm.
I don't want to be Yayati, but I would be, it'd be so wonderful to be in one's early 40s now.
Yeah, yeah. And you are young,
No, I
Chalpati,
am not.
in all senses. The first time when I met Chalpati was when he gave a wonderful colloquium at ISER Pune. It was one of the best I have heard, and also the kind of interaction. And readily you can see that you are talking to a scholar, and that's something which is very important for all of us to actually learn more about. So I hope this conversation will also kind of motivate few people to look at these things from a very broader perspective. And thank you very much, Chalpati, for your time, your thoughts, and also for all your books and various different aspects of writing. They have, at least personally, it has inspired me to also do better, and I'm very sure it has also inspired almost multiple. There's a fan club of Professor Chalpati. Just imagine that a writer actually having such kind of traction is rare, but it's totally deserving. So thank you very much for your time and your
Thank you
thoughts.
so much, Pamat. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. This is Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. This time, we have actually tried to get an overview of the humanities in the form of history and history writing through one and the only Professor Venkatachalapathy. Vanakkam.
Thank you. Bye.